All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. We're almost to lesson 100. Tuesday will be the last day of lessons. Wednesday and Thursday is all going to be study guide problems. And then on Friday, you're gonna have a video how to do each one, so you're prepared for the test next week. So tomorrow's video will be the last official teaching video. All right, so solving rational equations. Whenever you see something like this, if you see two fractions and they're set equal to each other like this, what you do to solve them is you cross multiply. So it's one fraction set equal to the other one, you cross multiply. You get 3 times x minus 6 is equal to x times 5 or 5x. You go ahead and simplify that. You're always solving for x no matter what you do in math. Math, there's always some type of a pattern there, and that pattern is to solve for x in any way possible. So here, now let's go ahead and get x by itself. Let's do distributive property. So now we have that. And then the last part, if after we're looking at that, we just go ahead and solve for x. So we move the 3x over here. We have negative 18x is equal to 2x. Divide by 2. And x is equal to negative 9. The book has it to where you check your answers. I would check your answers, but for the sake of time in this video, I really can't. You check your answers, just plug in negative 9 and place it there and see if the two equations equal each other, because sometimes it's not both answers. In some cases, you'll have two answers for x, but one of them might not work for it. Example 2. So these fractions are not set equal to each other. There's no way you can do it. So for the example 1a method, we can't apply that to this one. Here we have fractions. We have one fraction plus another fraction gives you a whole number. So from this point here, what we do to simplify this, and this is one of my favorite ways, is we're going to get rid of the fraction altogether. To get rid of the fraction altogether, so I put this over 1 to show me all the denominators, I'm going to multiply each of the terms by the least common denominator. So the denominator that the least common denominator basically. So now if you look here, there's at least an x. We're not counting all the x's, we're not going to put x squared. We have to see if all of them have at least one x. So this one doesn't have an x, but we're trying to do multiples. Remember, it's least common multiples, just like 2 and 8. So multiples of 2 is 2, 4, 6, 8, and 8 is just 8 itself. So we're not dividing, or it's the opposite, it's multiplying. So it looks like we have at least one x, and it looks like we have at least a 2. So this one's a 1, but we never count ones. So here, the least common denominator, we're going to multiply every term is by 2x. That's the least common denominator. So just like how we did a couple of weeks ago with the problems for the least common denominator, you're going to multiply it. So what this is showing you, since we already have an x here, we're going to go ahead and cancel this x out here. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to do 3 times 2 plus. So here we already have the 2x, so we don't have to multiply anything with it, so we just have 16. And for 11, we don't have a 2x whatsoever, so I'm going to multiply the whole thing there. So when you multiply by the least common denominator, it gets rid of all denominators altogether. Now, since we have that, I multiply and make sure you're crossing out things that they already have. So this one had an x, I crossed it out, so that's why I'm only multiplying the 2 with it. Now, let's go ahead and simplify. So I have 6 plus 16 equals 22x. If you add this, you get 22 equals 22x. Divide by that, and x is equal to 1. So x is equal to 1, and that's how you simplify it. The third one, example 3. So now we have a little bit of, it's just a little bit more complicated, but same concept as over here. So we want to get rid of all fractions altogether so it won't be as confusing. So I'm going to multiply each term, there's 3 of them, by the least common denominator. Anytime I see parentheses, or I don't think it had parentheses, but I always put parentheses in place of it so I know it's a binomial. I can't separate them. Whenever I see binomial, that binomial automatically is one of the factors for the least common denominator. So I know I'm going to multiply each one by x minus 1. Now, if I look at the numbers here, I have a 2, so I need at least a multiple of 2, so I'm going to include that 2. There's at least one x. They all don't have x's. This one's x minus 1. It doesn't really mean x by itself. But here they have at least one x, so they have a multiple of 1x. I'm not combining the two x's together, so it's just one multiple of x. And they have one of the 2. And then, sorry about that, you go ahead and multiply every number by the least common denominator. So this is 3. So least common denominator is 2 times x. So we have a 2, we have 1x. We don't have x squared. The largest exponent for x is just x, and then x minus 1. You're going to multiply every one of these to that. So I'm going to do this one as well. 2 times x minus 1, and this one as well. 2 times x minus 1. And the reason why I didn't put parentheses, I didn't want to confuse you even more. So here, let's look at the first term. So it looks like the first term we already have the denominator of x minus 1, so I cross it out. The only thing I'm multiplying the numerator is by 2x. Minus, I'm going to break it down. So here, it looks like in the denominator I have 1x, so I can cancel out the x there. So I'm doing 2 times 2 times the x minus 1. So I'm just bringing it down. I'm not adding them. Remember, you're multiplying to get rid of the denominator. And then equals, we have 5 over 2x. We have a 2x here, so it looks like the only thing we're multiplying, the 5, is by x minus 1. Find the least common denominator. Multiply each factor. When you're multiplying, you're crossing out things that they already have. And you're multiplying with the things that they don't have. Now, let's go ahead and simplify this. So we have 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms. So this one, 3 times 2x, 6x. Here, let's go ahead and do it a step at a time. So I'm going to do minus 4. So 2 times 2, 4, I'm bringing the minus sign. I'm not going to multiply this x minus 1 just yet. And for this one, I am. So 5x minus 5. Now let's go ahead and simplify it again. 6x just stays as 6x. I'm going to go ahead and distribute that. So I'm doing step by step because if you do one thing wrong, it messes up the whole problem. So now you have minus 4x. Remember, it's negative 4. So negative 4 times x, negative 4x. Negative 4 times negative 1, positive 4. And this all stays the same. From this point, we're trying to simplify and trying to solve for x. So let's say, for example, 3. We're just going to go ahead and move things around. So before we move things around, so I'll put my dotted line, because remember, when you cross that line, it changes the sign. I want to make sure once each side is simplified. So here, I can simplify the 6x minus 4x. I get 2x plus 4 is equal to 5x minus 5. Now, let's go ahead and start moving things so we can solve for x. I'm going to move over the 2x. At the same time, since we're a little more advanced, I'm going to go ahead and move over the 5 on this side as well, so I can get the x by itself. So I have 3x is equal to 9. Again, you don't have to do this. I'm just trying to do a couple steps at the same time. And after that, we get x by itself by dividing. So, and then x is equal to 3. You can check your answers to see if it works, but you're just going step by step. Example 4. So now we have 2 fractions that equal to each other, but the thing is, they are binomials, meaning there's parentheses around them. I would put parentheses to know that I can't really separate them. They're together. So then, let's go ahead and cross multiply. When I cross multiply, I have x minus 1 times 2x minus 4. That is equal to, and I always have that cross so it shows me what to multiply. X minus 2 times x plus 9. You go ahead and multiply it out. You use FOIL, the first, outside, inside, last. So I'll go back to the lesson, look up on Purple Math to see how to do FOIL method. You should know this by now, but just go ahead and do another video before you go on to this one. Now, let's go ahead and multiply x times 2x, 2x squared, x times negative 4, negative 4x, negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x, negative 1 times negative 4, positive 4. I have that right there. Next one, let's go ahead and do the same thing. First, outside numbers, inside numbers, last numbers. So x times x is x squared, x times 9, 9x, negative 2 times x, negative 2x, negative 2 times 9, negative 18. Before we start moving things around, we have to simplify each side. They have like terms on each side. They have those 2 as like terms. So now we have 2x squared minus 6x plus 4 is equal to x squared plus 7x minus 18. Now, I'm going to go move everything on one side. I see the x squared. That means we might be factoring. Move everything on this side. So remember, I always move the lesser of the 2. So I'm moving this x squared on this side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move all of them in the same step. So at the same time I'm moving the x squared, I'm also moving the 7x. Keep in mind, you're changing signs, and you're always adding it to the like terms. So I'm subtracting 7x, I'm gonna have to subtract 7x underneath the 6x. And here I'm gonna add opposite signs. I'm gonna add to both sides here. So now on this side I have 0. I'm trying to factor because in the end we're just trying to solve for x. So now 2x squared minus x is just x. Negative 6 minus 7 is minus 13x. And 18 plus 4 is positive 22. From this, we factor. We want to factor so we can get what x is. So factors of positive 22 that equal negative 13. And that would be 11 and 2. So 22, either both are positive, both are negative. In this case, it's a negative. Looks like negative 11 minus 2 gives you negative 13. So that means your two factors, your parentheses x minus 11 times x minus 2 equal 0. From this point, remember that anything that's equal to 0, we have to solve for them. We set this one and this one equal to 0. So x minus 11 equals 0, x minus 2 equals 0. So you're from there. And then get x by itself. X equals 11. X equals positive 2. And those are your answers. Last one, and then we're done. So here we have a word problem. In this word problem, you see this all the time. So in Algebra 2 and pre-calculus, even geometry. Here it says, let me turn there. Okay. So it takes Samuel 7 hours to paint one house. It takes Jake 5 hours to paint the same house. How long will it take them if they work together? So here we have for Sam's rate, he takes 7 hours to paint one house. So if it's 7 hours to paint one house, we're going to try to divide that and see how many times it takes him for 1 hour. And if you divide 1 divided by 7, you end up with 1/7. Jake, it takes him 5 hours to paint a house. We want to see how long it'll take him to paint one house. So that means you do 1 divided by 5. It takes him 1/5 of an hour. He finishes about 1/5 of the house in 1 hour. So that's not that much. And let's say the complete job is just equal to 1. We compare it to just one whole number there. So here we're trying to find how long it'll take if they both paint together. If Sam paints 7 hours for one house, Jake paints 5 hours for the same house, we want to see how long it'll take if they both work together. So then we have our two equations here. We're going to go ahead and add them. So 1/7 times h, because that's per hour, 1/5 is equal to 1. 1 is considered that one complete job, so that we want to see how long it'll take. Now, we go ahead and simplify. Apparently, to this, we will have to find the common denominator. We want to go ahead and solve for it. So the common denominator for this will be 35. So remember, you're multiplying all three of them by 35. We know that 7 goes into 35 5 times, so it's 5 hours here. We know 5 goes into 35 7 times, so it's 7 hours there. 1 times 35, 35. And then we go ahead and combine like terms and solve. So 7 plus 5 is 7, 10, 12 hours. 12h is equal to 35. To solve for it, you divide by 12 to both sides. And how long will it take? I think it was 2 and 11/12. Let me see if I got that right. And the book says, yep, it takes almost 3 hours for them to paint the house together. So that's how long it will take. So you're working out, remember you're dividing the 1 hour by the number of hours they actually took. That's why it's 1 divided by 7, 1 divided by 5. All right, if you need any more help, let me know. Make sure you're diligent, do your work. It's due Friday. All your missing assignments is due Friday. I'm not taking in no later than Friday. I have to grade all of those assignments for your grades to be in the following week. All right, bye-bye.